You guys are listening to the Confronting Christianity podcast. I'm here with my friend and fellow middle-aged woman, Jen Wilkin. And we are back for a second episode on aging because I want to talk to Jen specifically. We covered in our previous episode, we sort of focused more on thinking about end of life kind of aging and whether that's something that you're going through right now or whether that's something that people in your life are going through or whether you're sort of looking to the time when there'll be more people in your life who are at that stage. But one of the things, so Jen, you and I got to have dinner, or I got to have dinner with you a few months ago, a year ago,
I enjoyed it too.
Sometime last year. I had the pleasure of having dinner at Jen's house with her husband and her son and some other members of their community, which in and of itself, number one, it was just delightful to see a family dinner that included non-biological family members, because I'm a huge believer in that. And number two, there was a moment that will always live with me from that dinner. Did I mention this on a previous episode? I'm getting like major deja vu here, but we'll see. We'll see.
Go ahead.
Anyway,
anytime someone has something nice to say about me, I'm happy to hear it
true.
twice.
So here's the lovely thing. There was a teenage boy at this dinner, and he wanted advice on a girl situation. And he handed Jen his phone with a text that he was planning on sending to this girl for her review. Now, what did this communicate to me as somebody sort of just parachuting into this web of relationships? What it communicated was this teenage boy looked to somebody who was not his mother, and not that he wasn't looking to his mother, but like it looked to somebody who was not his mother, not his grandmother, not his like biological aunt, like no family relation, and trusted her wisdom or like appealed to her wisdom in a situation that was really sort of personally important to him. And it crystallized for me what what I've sometimes described as the sort of middle-aged woman superpower, which is, I think, and I don't think it's unique to middle-aged women, to be clear. We'll sort of build out from there. But one of the things that I increasingly recognize in my own life is that I have the privilege of actually speaking into the lives of my younger brothers and sisters in the faith. Giving them, whether it's encouragement or wisdom or loving correction or a hug and a cup of tea and a meal, like all of the above. But there is an opportunity to show a particular kind of love to those who are younger than we are, that actually those younger than we are people really want and need. And I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on that, sort of how your faith in Jesus shapes how you approach those kinds of relationships and how it even sort of builds those kinds of relationships in the first place.
Well, I have to give credit to his parents because they have cultivated an appreciation in their kids for the voices of other people, which, you as a parent, that's like kind of the ultimate parenting hack, is when you can get other adults who aren't you to say what you would say in that situation. That's the golden triangle there of raising children. And so I give a lot of credit to his parents, but that's something that I wanted to do as well. You want your kids to know that wisdom is out there and that, when you're his age, you're inhabiting social media spaces probably where the people who are your influencers are average age 18 to 25 years. So think about that. Like out on TikTok, out on Instagram, the people who we garner wisdom from are
wisdom in inverted commas
18 to 25 years in age. And so I think there's never been a better time for Christian parents to be giving their children eyes upward toward trusted voices from whom they can learn from their experience. And so I had people who were like that for my kids. I have a mentor who's been that for me. And then my own parents, frankly. My father is 86 and he continues to be a source of wisdom for me. My stepmother as well. She's 79. She continues to be a source of wisdom for me. And but we live in a time where when you hit middle age, since middle age is going to be the focus of our conversation, it is the beginning of invisibility, in particular, I think, for women. It becomes, and we feel it, right? You feel yourself fading into the background. And so the question then becomes, what are the relationships that I'm either actively cultivating or that someone is inviting me into that enable the mining of the resources that I'm just beginning to realize are developing in me? Because I don't know how you feel about being in midlife. And thank you. It's very kind of you to say to a 57-year-old that I was still in midlife, but I don't think I'm living to 114. We'll see. But you know how like you hit 40-ish and you're like, oh, I'm still pretty dumb, but I'm not as dumb as I used to be, right?
Yeah.
And then I would say I got into my 50s and I was like, I actually think I figured some things out, and then I think about how my dad must feel because you get this repetition of patterns, right? Like I'll sit and have coffee with a 25-year-old and she'll start in with what her question is. And I probably know where the conversation is going because I've had a lot of coffee with 25-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
And so then I have to remind myself, no, listen to her version of it, like dial in. But I'm not wondering how I'm going to respond in the way that I used to be. I remember having coffee with women who were 25 when I was in my 30s and thinking, dear Lord in heaven, I don't have the resources to help this person. I don't feel that way as much anymore. But whether or not someone who's more likely to listen to an 18 to 25-year-old on TikTok is actually going to ask me for help is a growing question, even within the church.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned middle-aged women feeling more and more invisible and irrelevant. And I think that is a very real phenomenon. At the same time...
They're not just feeling it. I think it's an actual way that our society treats
right, for sure. At the same time, as I look around my own local church, which, we are certainly far from a properly New Testament model of like deep, rich community that is not just focused on nuclear families. It's, I'm not for a minute saying like we have solved this puzzle. But what I actually see, not only in my own life, but in the lives of sort of my peers age-wise, is that we're more and more actually relevant because, our church generally skews quite young, and the people in their teens and 20s and even in their 30s actually really want relationship with older people who can love and care for them and encourage and sort of steer them, if that's the word. But I'm curious for your thoughts on this, because one of the things that's been that I've been reflecting on just in the last few years is just as when you are a parent, I have 3 kids who are 15, 13 and 7 right now. There is an asymmetry to our relationship in that I have a certain degree of responsibility toward them for their emotional lives that they don't have toward me. So it is appropriate for my children to come to me to sort of cry all over me, to tell me everything that's going on in their lives, and to sort of expect me to pick them up and look after them and for their it's not that I don't ever share anything that's sort of harder in my life with my kids, but when I do that, I'll do it with the intention of helping them. I'll say, yes, I relate to how you're feeling here because of this. They're not the people on whom I should be kind of pouring my troubles. I should have actually people in my life, peers in my life, or older people in my life who are doing that. And that likewise, as I relate to friends who are, 10, 15, 20 years younger than me, there's an opportunity for me to be part of their lives in a way that is similarly asymmetrical, and where I actually need to be a safe person on whom they can land when they feel like everything's falling apart and when they're really struggling. And it's not necessarily that like they should also be the people on whom I land. And I actually wonder if part of the reason sometimes we struggle to build those sorts of intergenerational relationships is when people aren't also pursuing kind of more peer level relationships where they can have a completely kind of reciprocal, like, I will cry on you this week and you'll cry on me next week sort of relationship. Tell me your thoughts on that, oh wise one.
Well, I think it changes according to different seasons of life, at least in my experience. So I did have asymmetry with my kids. I will always have some form of asymmetry with them just because I've lived longer.
Yeah.
And I find this also with people who I do ministry with, right? Like I'm always going to be older than JT and Kyle. From knowing that I am. And I'm going to see things differently than they do because I'm older. But with my kids in particular, I think because there is a degree of vulnerability among family, that's just different as they have moved into adulthood. And I would say Jeff and I have been pretty vulnerable with them all along, pretty open about, especially like, church struggles. And I would say now at this stage, I think it's what has kept them in church and made them not want to leave is because they understood all along that it was complex. So we have probably erred on the side of vulnerability. And as they have moved into adulthood, I would say I view them as peers, but not entirely so, right? So, but it does feel like we can confide in each other, our hurts and our struggles and all those kinds of things, and our wins and our losses and all those kinds of things in a way that I would not have when they were younger. And then when I think about the way that my relationship is shaping with my aged parents, the older they got, moved into a place where them sharing their vulnerabilities became essential to my ability to offer care to them.
Right. Yes.
You know, and so I think that's something I'm trying to keep awareness of, like in my notes to my future self is, hey, remember, don't conceal what's really going on because you perceive yourself to be the parent with more experience. You've got to really tell the truth and tell the truth sooner rather than later. And so I do think it shifts, and a lot of it depends on the personalities that we're talking about in any given relationship, whether you're going to be more vulnerable or less vulnerable, and the level of trust that's there. But I would say that I've seen it morph over time. I'm already trying to prepare myself to not conceal the effects of aging that might be pertinent to my children's ability to care for me as I move into later stages of life.
Yeah. No, I think that's super helpful, and there are going to be shifts at various stages in our lives and in different kinds of relationships. But I think, I guess I still want to stand behind some degree of saying, actually, there are relationships that we can be very meaningfully and importantly part of other people's lives, and that sometimes that means actually foregrounding their feelings and their experiences, and not just seeing it as a sort of reciprocal thing, or as and I see this as well as I sort of see friends with parents or grandparents and sort of how they relate to children and grandchildren, even the sort of biological family. The grandparents who bring all their emotional needs and sort of lay them at the feet of their grandchildren do not end up with good relationships with their grandchildren, but the grandparents who come to their grandchildren willing to receive their emotional needs and to love them in the midst of that, actually their grandchildren will sort of keep coming back. And sort of likewise in church fellowship settings, the willingness to say, I want to go out of my way to love and care for younger people in this church, and I'm not going to seek that out as a sort of way to meet all of my emotional needs, but I'm going to kind of make myself somebody who's available to be in more of a caring role to them. That's actually a place of meaningful and important intimacy that is rewarding for everybody, but that sort of preserves that inequality isn't the right word, but that sort of differential.
What's the wisdom of age? It's a superior. How does the Westminster Catechism say it? Those who are superiors in age and experience. That's what they say about the Fifth Commandment. I love that language. And I think I missed the original thrust of your question. I absolutely agree with that. I remember when I was on church staff, I would have, and I still do meet with a fair number of women, to talk about what they're going through. But my assistant was scheduling, like 3 meetings back to back on the day that I was able to have coffees. And I had to tell her, I can't carry all that. Like,
No.
I need to have one of these on a day, because you're absorbing and absorbing and absorbing. And I do think that's ministry. And I can't adequately carry what the third person in that coffee sequence needs me to carry because of the dignifying what the person in the first coffee needed me to carry. I don't want to just see it as I sit there and wait to respond to your questions robotically with pat answers. And so, yeah, I do think that being the older woman means you're dealing patiently a lot of times with immaturity. I think it means that you're dealing. One of the things I see come up over and over again, my husband says that people live life like they're the first human.
Right.
They come to you and they're like, I just can't believe this is happening to me. And you're thinking, this is actually a pretty universal experience. And how am I going to draw you in gently, kindly? I'm not going to reproach you for that. That's a typical framework to move through life with when you're young. Now, if you're 45 and you're still living that way, I do probably have some different words for you.
Right.
So yes, I do think that the privilege and there is a privilege and a responsibility associated with being the older person in the relationship, where you're dealing with patience and charity toward the younger conversation partner.
Yeah, and for me at least, one of the blessings of being a middle-aged woman is that I have particular relationships with younger women in our church, but I also have some significant relationships with younger men who will kind of come to me for advice or input or just or hearing from me that they might not have wanted to hear, and to be able to show up for them in a way that is meaningful, and nobody is sort of threatened by, or what there's sort of no kind of complications in anybody's minds. That there's actually a huge opportunity there, and not to say I think there's a vital role for men to invest in the lives of younger men in churches as well. And I think everything that we're saying about women here actually sort of maps onto the need that younger men have for older men in their lives who will mentor them and encourage them and challenge them and all the things. But there's also a particular kind of opportunity, I think, for even as a middle-aged woman to kind of be caring for some of the younger guys and giving them some encouragement and help, where often it's even harder, I think, for younger men to ask for help when they need it or to be vulnerable. There might be some ways that we can kind of be safe pairs of ears and shoulders to cry on.
Absolutely. And I don't know why we would even say that apologetically. I know you're not, but a lot of people are like, whoa, no. And, in our circles, people are consumed with the issue of fatherlessness. And I worry that sometimes we speak so much about the fatherlessness problem that we forget that a motherlessness problem is an equal tragedy, and that a lot of young men in the church feel like it would be wrong or useless to have a mentor relationship with an older woman. But let's transport this back onto, or map it back onto, the nuclear family idea. My son Matt is about to turn 30. He's not done having a relationship with me. He still benefits from my wisdom and my perspective, and he knows that I love him, so it will be given in a way that's for his flourishing. Why would we assume that the family of God would be deprived of those kinds of interactions in our spiritual family? I don't understand why. Matt didn't grow to manhood and suddenly his relationship with Jeff was the only one that mattered for his growth.
Yeah.
And so why would we assume in the family of God that things would be any different?
Yeah. And likewise, actually, sort of playing to a different angle here, one of the blessings of being a Christian involved in church community is that my husband and I are not raising our kids by ourselves, but we are raising them in the context of a larger community.
In a community, yeah.
One of the most sort of obvious and natural and easy ways that happens is that younger women end up being involved in the lives of our children in meaningful ways. But what's also been really beautiful, and I've been noticing this more and more in the last several months, is the ways that some younger men are involved in the lives of our children. And I want to say, absolutely, for sure, and unquestionably, I have different boundaries and barriers and sort of my level of willingness to open up the lives of my children to men is just different than my willingness to open it up to women because of protection issues and just the reality of how quite how the likelihood of abuse from a man is just far and away higher than from a woman. All of those things haven't been said, and with all the necessary kind of precautions and
caveats,
seeing the way that it has been a blessing to my children and a blessing to the young men who invested in their lives is just beautiful. I'll give one example. My eldest is into debate at the moment, and so she has these debate tournaments, and one of the expectations of being part of a debate tournament is you field a quote parent judge. So all day on Saturday from sort of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. The expectation is that a parent will show up to judge other pairs of kids debating so that your kid can debate. And when I heard this, I thought, ooh, when they say parent judge, surely what they really mean is other adult, right?
Right.
Because in fact, the only criterion for judging is you have to have graduated high school. Like that's all that they require. So I put a message out to our community group saying, hey, who would like to be a parent judge? And 3 young men in our community group all eagerly signed up for this job. 2 of them, I think, actively just really enjoyed the process of like judging debate. I mean, I don't honestly understand it, but they did. And Godspeed, what a blessing. The 3rd young man it wasn't that he especially enjoyed the process of being a debate judge. What he found really meaningful was the fact that I had invited him into our family and sort of trusted him with something pertaining to one of my children. And it was striking to me, oh, this was a blessing to me, but it was also a blessing to him. And seeing that time and again, another young man who's been he's in a period of seeking employment, and he mentioned to my husband that playing with the kids after church one day, just running around in the church playground, chasing them, playing tag and all the things, had just like brought so much joy to him after a week of relentless applications for jobs that was frankly depressing. And just realizing, oh, there is so much, when we actually act like church might be a family, there is so much blessing for all concerned. It's almost like what the Bible says is actually for our good.
Yes, amazing, right?
Jen, I've taken more than enough of your valuable time. I know that the sands of time are running out for you. No.
My time is more valuable than yours, isn't it? By about a decade.
No. Not at all. It is always a joy to see your face and to hear your wisdom. And hopefully those listening to us have benefited from it as well. So Jen's book, if you want to grab it, which I highly recommend you do, is called Dust to Dust, Aging Wisely in an Anti-Aging World. Did I get the subtitle right?
And you can't grab it until July, but you can pre-order it.
Pre-order it, even better.
Yeah, even better. And then wait with eager anticipation as the lines continue to form on your face.
Yeah. I mean, the lines continue to form of people like queuing up to buy the book.
Oh, no.
Which is also true.
I'm really curious. I think it'll be interesting to see. I'm really curious how the book will be received by younger women who I think, first of all, they're not already thinking about aging probably, other than they're thinking about their appearance based on the social media pond of influence. Yes, swamp. But I'm so curious. I think it's a book for men and for women, and I think it's a book for people who are already in the midst of experiencing the downhill side of aging. And I think it's also, I really hope, a book for the young, because it's the kind of thing that I wish I had started thinking about much, much earlier, so that I could have not just, the book is framed up around true stories and false stories. And the world is telling us a very false story about aging. And the Bible has, as part of the one true and beautiful story, a true story to tell us about aging as well. So my hope is that that's what readers will find. Yeah, I love that. You guys have been listening to the Confronting Christianity podcast. You can follow us on X or Instagram, leave a review on iTunes, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or sign up for weekly updates at confrontingchristianity.org. And between now and next week, ask yourself this question.
if Jesus is in fact true, if his claims about himself are in fact true, if he really is the way, the truth, and the life, if he is the one without whom there is no life and with whom even if you die, you will live, how does that change how you think about your own aging? Maybe could it be that rather than dreading the years to come, whether it's the advent of wrinkles or whether it's the advent of cancer or whether it's the advent of end-of-life care, how would it change your thinking if you truly believed that you are soon to begin your even better life with the Lord? And conversely, if you're somebody who doesn't believe that Jesus is true or who's been questioning whether his claims are real and you can bank on that, if Jesus isn't true, then all we are is mammals. All we are is atoms and molecules gathered together for a brief period of time. We are in the process of decay, which we can at best delay, and we are on a sort of slow and steady march to death without hope in this world. That's the contrast. Jen and I have our chips firmly in Jesus's hands, and we would invite you to do that as well.